Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, we're stepping into the hidden world of owls. These birds are so familiar, and yet so strange. But the more closely you look, the less ordinary they seem. They move through forests, fields, deserts, and frozen tundra with a kind of precision that feels almost unreal. Some can find prey beneath snow. Some can vanish against tree bark in plain sight. Some scream instead of hoot. And some live in burrows underground, as if they've ignored every rule we thought owls followed. What makes them so captivating is not only their mystery, but their design. Their faces gather sound. Their feathers soften flight. Their eyes fix forward with an intensity that makes them seem almost unnervingly aware. Across the world, they have inspired stories of wisdom, warnings, night, and knowledge. But the real story may be even more fascinating. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is settle in. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breathing slow. And let your eyes grow heavy as we explore this fascinating world of owls together. Let's begin. Owls can hear prey moving beneath deep snow in darkness. In the far north, winter hides the ground beneath a thick white lid. For many hunters, that would end the chase. For an owl, it can be the beginning. A great grey owl may perch in silence, listening to a vole tunneling under snow it cannot see through. It is not hearing a loud sound. It is detecting faint scratches, tiny shifts, and the rustle of a body moving through a hidden tunnel. Then it launches, drops with its feet first, and crashes through the surface like a spear. Sometimes the bird disappears almost to its chest before pulling out prey from a world completely concealed from view. That ability feels almost supernatural, yet it is the result of hearing refined to an extreme. Snow dulls and bends sound, which makes the task harder, not easier. Even so, the owl can still build a map of the movement below, then strike the exact place where life is stirring unseen. Some owls fly so quietly their wings are almost silent. Most birds announce themselves to the air. Their wings beat, the feathers slice, and a soft rush follows every movement. Owls solve that problem in a different way. Their wings are built to break up noise before it forms. The front edge of each flight feather has a comb-like fringe that disrupts the flow of air. The surface is soft and velvety, which helps absorb the hiss that feathers usually make. The trailing edge frays sound even further, so the whole wing turns turbulence into something almost inaudible. That silence is not just impressive, it is survival. A mouse that never hears danger has no chance to freeze or flee. It also helps the hunter listen while flying, which is far more difficult if your own wings are roaring in your ears. In that sense, every glide is a masterpiece of engineering. The bird is not merely moving through the night, it is slipping through it without a sound. An owl's face works like a living satellite dish. At first glance, an owl's face looks almost human in its intensity. Look longer, and the shape begins to reveal its true purpose. It is a sound-gathering instrument made of feathers, arranged to catch faint noises and direct them inward. In some species, those feathers can even be adjusted, which changes how sound is focused. That means an owl's face helps them do something that most birds cannot do with such precision. It helps build an acoustic picture of the world. A vole shifts in grass. A beetle scrapes bark. A twig clicks under a hidden foot. Those tiny sounds are gathered, concentrated, and sent toward the ears with remarkable efficiency. It is a strange thought that a face can function almost like a listening device. But that is exactly what happens. The expression we find so haunting is part of a hunting system, shaped by evolution into something that seems both elegant and slightly uncanny. Owls cannot turn their eyes, so they turn their heads. Those famous owl eyes seem to lock onto the world with almost unsettling intensity. The reason is stranger than most people realize. They are not built like our eyes at all. Instead of round, mobile eyeballs, many owls have long, tube-like eyes held firmly in place by bony structures. That gives them a powerful forward view and helps gather light, but it comes with a cost. They cannot simply glance sideways. If they want a different angle, the whole head has to move. That is why an owl can seem so still one moment, then swivel with abrupt precision the next. The movement is not theatrical. It is a practical solution to a structural problem, and it changes the whole personality of the bird. A pigeon flicks its gaze around quickly. An owl appears to inspect the world with total focus, as if every sound and motion deserves full attention. That fixed stare is not a mood. It is anatomy shaping behavior. Some owls hunt by day and even live underground. The popular image of an owl is a bird hidden in a tree, waiting for darkness. Burrowing owls break that image with cheerful defiance. They often stand out in open country under a bright sky, perched on fence posts or mounds of dirt, scanning the ground like tiny sentries. Instead of nesting in hollow trees, they live in tunnels dug by mammals such as prairie dogs and ground squirrels. If no one has left a suitable home behind, they may even reshape one for themselves. They run across the ground more than people expect, bob when alert, and often hunt insects in daylight with quick, nimble movements. This makes them feel almost like a different kind of owl entirely, one that has traded shadow for sun and branches for burrows. Yet that is part of what makes owls so captivating. Just when you think you understand the group, one species appears from a hole in the earth and rewrites the whole picture. The smallest owl on earth is barely bigger than a sparrow. When people imagine owls, they tend to picture something broad-winged and imposing, with a heavy stare and large talons. Then, along comes the elf owl, and the whole idea shrinks to something astonishingly tiny. This little bird can fit in the palm of a hand and weighs less than many songbirds. Yet it is no less an owl for its size. It still has the alert posture, the keen attention, and the sudden hunting energy of its larger relatives. In the deserts of the southwest, it often nests in old woodpecker holes carved into giant cacti, which means an owl can spend the day tucked inside a living column of green flesh, armed with spines. At night it emerges to hunt insects, scorpions, and other small prey with brisk determination. There is something delightful about that scale contrast. A creature associated with power and mystery becomes miniature without losing any of its identity or charm. Owls live on every continent except Antarctica. It is easy to think of owls as forest birds, but that picture is far too small. They live in deserts where the air shimmers with heat. They live in rainforests heavy with moisture and insects. They live in mountain valleys, open grasslands, Arctic tundra, city parks, coastal farms, and boreal woods, where winter holds for months. Few bird groups feel so widely scattered across the planet. The one continent they truly miss is Antarctica, where the lack of suitable land habitat and prey makes life too severe even for them. Everywhere else, they have found ways to fit in. Some remain hidden and local. Others range across enormous territories. This global spread is part of their fascination. The result is not one kind of bird, but many answers to the same challenge. How do you become a hunter of the half-light, wherever on Earth that opportunity appears? A barn owl can hunt using sound more than sight. A barn owl drifting over a dark field is performing one of the most precise hunting acts in the animal world. It does not need a clear view of its target in the way we might assume. In controlled experiments, barn owls have struck at prey guided largely by sound alone, even when visual cues were reduced. That means the bird can build a three-dimensional sense of where something is from tiny differences in when a sound arrives and how loud it is in each ear. One ear receives a whisper a fraction earlier. The other catches it slightly lower or louder. From that, the brain computes position with startling accuracy. Then the body responds almost instantly. The wings hold a steady line. The legs drop. The talons open at the final moment. It is a reminder that the night is not empty for an owl. It is structured, layered, and full of information, if you possess the senses to read it the way this hunter does. Owl ear tufts are not ears at all. Those pointed tufts on top of some owls give them a dramatic look, and many people assume they must be the bird's ears. In reality, the true ear openings sit at the sides of the head, hidden beneath feathers. The tufts are something else entirely. They are feather structures, and their purpose seems to be tied mostly to display and disguise. Raised high, they can change the bird's outline and make it look more branch-like, more alert, or even larger and stranger than it really is. Flattened down, they nearly vanish. This ability to alter appearance is useful in the still world where many owls spend the day trying not to be noticed. It also changes the expression of the bird so dramatically that humans read meaning into it, as if ear tufts signal mood or intelligence. They do not help hearing in the direct way people imagine. Instead, they help create the silhouette, mystery, and visual theater that make certain owls unforgettable at first glance. Some owl species can rotate their heads astonishingly far behind them. The famous head turn is not a magic trick, though it feels like one when you see it happen. Some owls can rotate the head far enough that they seem to look almost directly behind themselves without moving the body. For humans, that would be dangerous. For an owl, the neck is built for it. These birds have extra neck vertebrae compared with us, which gives them unusual flexibility. More remarkably, their blood vessels are arranged in ways that help protect the brain and eyes when the head twists through such extreme angles. That matters because turning so far could otherwise kink vital arteries. The result is a bird that can scan a huge arc while staying perched and motionless, which is a perfect advantage for a patient ambush hunter. It also deepens the uncanny feeling owls produce in people. A face that already seems fixed and watchful can suddenly pivot far beyond normal expectation, as if ordinary rules do not apply. Owl feathers are built to muffle turbulence before it becomes sound. A normal wing pushes air aside, and the air answers back with noise. On an owl, that conversation is interrupted almost before it starts. The feather edges are shaped to break the flow into smaller currents, and the surface texture softens what remains. Instead of one louder rush, the air is scattered into faint, broken threads of sound that quickly fade. This matters most in the final approach, when the last few feet decide where the dinner escapes. At that distance, even a tiny hiss could warn a mouse, a shrew, or a sleeping bird. The owl's plumage turns what should be an obvious arrival into something ghost-like. It is not perfect silence, but it is close enough to seem unnatural if you hear it from below. That design also reveals something beautiful about evolution. The bird was not made quieter by one change alone. It became quieter through many small refinements, all working together like parts of an invisible machine. A great grey owl looks huge, but much is feather. Seen at dusk, a great grey owl can seem enormous, almost too large for the branch holding it. Its broad face, long tail, and thick body shape create the impression of a giant predator. Yet beneath that magnificent outline is a bird, lighter and slimmer than many people expect. Much of the apparent size comes from an extraordinary layer of plumage that traps air and warmth in freezing country. This helps it hunt through brutal winters where smaller, less insulated bodies would struggle. It also changes how the bird feels in the imagination. What looks bulky and powerful is, in part, a carefully built winter coat. Strip away the feathers in your mind, and the body is suddenly more delicate than the silhouette suggests. That contrast is one reason the species feels so uncanny. It appears like a giant shadow in the forest, but its vastness is partly an illusion, crafted by plumage into one of the most imposing shapes in the owl world. Barn owls belong to a different family from most other owls. People often speak of owls as though they form one simple group, but barn owls remind us that the story is more branching than it first appears. They belong to their own family, separate from the larger group that includes eagle owls, screech owls, and many others. You can sense that difference even before anyone explains it. The face is heart-shaped rather than round. The body is slim and pale. The flight feels buoyant, almost drifting. And the voice is often a harsh scream instead of a deep hoot. Put one beside a typical woodland owl and the contrast is striking, as if two lineages solved the problem of night hunting in slightly different ways. This split runs deep in their ancestry, which means the owl world has more than one ancient root. That makes barn owls feel even more remarkable. They are not merely a familiar species with a different look. They are part of a distinct branch in the long history of nocturnal hunters. Owl eyes are shaped more like tubes than globes. When we picture an eye, we usually imagine a round ball turning freely in its socket. In many owls, that picture fails completely. Their eyes are elongated, more like narrow tubes set deep within the skull. This unusual design allows a larger image to form on the retina and helps draw in light from dim environments, which is exactly what a hunter needs when the world has faded into shadow. The trade-off is that the eyes become fixed in place, giving the face that striking, unwavering stare people never forget. There is something dramatic about a creature whose gaze feels less like looking and more like being aimed. It is not simply watching. It appears to lock on. This structure also helps explain why an owl's whole head participates in seeing. Vision becomes a full-body event, with posture, neck, and balance working together. The result is a bird that seems built not for glancing around casually, but for intense, deliberate attention. Many owls see best at dawn, dusk, and night. The world does not switch cleanly from day to night. There is a middle realm, blue with fading light or washed with the first hint of morning. When shapes soften and movement becomes harder to read, many owls are masters of that in-between time. Their eyes are especially suited to low light, which makes twilight not a problem, but an opportunity. Rodents begin to stir. Songbirds settle. Shadows stretch long enough to hide an approach. In those hours, the owl is entering conditions shaped almost exactly for its strengths. This is one reason so many people experience owls as creatures of threshold moments. You do not always meet them in full sunlight. You hear them after sunset or glimpse them crossing a road just before dawn, and the encounter feels charged with mystery. They belong to the edges of the day, when most animals are changing shifts. That timing gives them access to prey and gives them a powerful hold on the human imagination. Their forward-facing eyes give owls remarkable depth perception. A hunter diving through branches or striking at something moving through grass cannot rely on guesswork. Distance must be judged quickly and with confidence. That is where the front-facing eyes of an owl become so important. Because both eyes look toward the same space ahead, the brain can compare the two views and calculate depth with impressive precision. This kind of overlap gives the bird a three-dimensional sense of where a target really is, not just that it exists. A rustle in leaves becomes a point in space. A mouse on a log becomes a measured distance rather than a blur. It is easy to forget how valuable that is until you imagine the alternative. A misjudged strike wastes energy, risks injury, and lets the prey vanish. The intense stare we notice in owls is tied to this practical need. Those eyes are not merely dramatic. They are part of a system built to judge space so well that one movement can end the hunt successfully. Some owls have asymmetrical ears for pinpointing hidden prey. Perfect symmetry feels natural to us, but some owls succeed by breaking it. In certain species, one ear opening sits slightly higher than the other, and sometimes the two differ in shape as well. That means a sound from below, above, or off to one side reaches each ear in a slightly different way. The brain uses those differences to determine not just direction, but height. For a hidden animal moving through grass or under leaf litter, that is a tremendous advantage. The owl does not simply know that something is nearby. It can estimate where in three-dimensional space that creature exists, even when it remains invisible. This turns the head into a kind of living instrument, tuned to tiny shifts in timing and intensity. It is one of the most elegant examples of predator design in birds. The hunter became more accurate not by growing louder or stronger, but by letting one side of the head differ from the other in a useful way. An owl can strike prey it never actually sees. Picture a field at night after fresh growth has thickened the ground. Stems overlap, shadows merge, and everything small disappears from sight. Yet a hunting owl can still drop into that tangle and seize something hidden within it. The bird may never have seen the animal's body at all. Instead, it acts on clues gathered in real time, combining faint sound, precise timing, and the memory of where movement began. By the moment the feet extend, the target may still be concealed under grass, leaves, or snow. This makes the strike feel almost impossible from a human point of view. We depend so heavily on sight that we forget another creature can build a different picture of reality and trust it completely. The owl is not guessing into darkness. It is responding to information arranged in another sensory language. That is part of what makes these birds so captivating. They reveal a world where hidden things are still legible, if your senses evolve to read them. Facial discs help funnel faint sounds straight toward an owl's ears. The feathers around an owl's face do not merely frame the eyes. They work more like a carefully shaped listening surface, collecting soft noises and guiding them inward. In species with especially prominent discs, even a slight rustle can be directed more efficiently toward the ear openings. That matters because prey does not always produce bold sounds. A vole might shift under moss. A bird might breathe against bark. A beetle might scratch once, then go still. The difference between detecting that sound and missing it can be the difference between eating and going hungry. The facial disc helps tip the balance. It is an elegant solution because it uses feathers, something birds already possess, and reshapes them into a sensory tool. This also changes how we should think about an owl's appearance. The broad face is not only expressive, it is functional in a deeply physical way. What seems like a mask is part of a system designed to turn faint noise into usable information. Some owls can hunt successfully in complete darkness. For many animals, darkness is merely reduced vision. For some owls, it becomes an environment that can still be navigated and exploited with astonishing confidence. In conditions where human eyes are almost useless, these birds may continue to locate and capture prey using sound as the primary guide. This does not mean darkness becomes easy. It means the owl has another way to understand it. A field with no visible detail is still full of clues. Tiny footsteps, brief chewing sounds, a rustle against dry stems. All of these become landmarks in an invisible map. The hunter listens, adjusts, and commits. What makes this so striking is that the strike can still be fast and decisive. There is no slow, fumbling search through blackness. There is action, often sudden and exact. That ability reshapes the meaning of night itself. What feels like emptiness to us may be crowded with signals to an owl, enough for the hunt to continue long after sight has ceased to matter. Burrowing owls make homes in abandoned mammal burrows. Most owls look upward for shelter, toward hollows in trees or hidden places among branches. Burrowing owls do the opposite. They look down. Across open landscapes, they take possession of tunnels first dug by animals such as prairie dogs, badgers, and ground squirrels. These underground homes offer stable temperatures, cover from weather, and protection for eggs and chicks in places where trees may be scarce or absent. There is something immediately charming about the arrangement, yet it is also a clever ecological shortcut. Instead of spending energy constructing a new shelter from scratch, the bird adopts an existing structure and turns it into a nursery. Life above ground may be windy, bright, and exposed, but below the surface there is cool darkness and a ready-made chamber. This habit also changes how you picture an owl family. Not on a limb, not in a hollow trunk, but under the prairie itself, with the parents standing watch at the entrance like small guardians of a hidden doorway. Burrowing owls often run on the ground instead of hopping. Many birds move in little bounds, lifting both feet in quick hops that seem built into the idea of bird behavior. Burrowing owls often choose something else. They run. With their long legs and upright posture, they can dash across open ground in a way that feels almost comical at first, until you realize how effective it is. Running lets them cover short distances quickly, chase insects, and reposition without constantly taking flight. On open grassland or near a burrow entrance, this can be exactly the right tool for the moment. It also gives them a personality, unlike the hushed tree owl most people imagine. They become animated, alert little ground hunters with a pace and posture that make them seem almost toy-like, then suddenly serious. Watching one sprint is a reminder that the owl body is more flexible in behavior than we often assume. Not every hunter of the night is bound to branches. Some are perfectly at home with dust on their feet. Elf owls often nest inside old woodpecker holes in cacti. In the desert, shelter can come from the most unexpected architecture. Elf owls often raise their young inside cavities carved earlier by woodpeckers into giant saguaro cacti. That means one of the smallest owls on Earth may spend the breeding season tucked inside a living tower of green tissue, far above the ground, surrounded by spines and sun. The image is so strange and specific that it feels invented, yet it is a real solution to desert life. The thick walls of the cactus help buffer heat, and the elevated cavity offers protection from many ground threats. This arrangement also links several species into one chain of opportunity. The cactus grows for decades. A woodpecker opens a chamber. Later, an owl moves in and turns that chamber into a nursery. The desert can look harsh and empty from a distance, but moments like this reveal how full it is of hidden partnerships and reused spaces, each one making life possible in unexpected ways. Snowy owls can live and hunt in the Arctic tundra. The Arctic tundra is a place of cold wind, open distances, and seasons pushed to extremes. Trees vanish. Shelter grows scarce. Winter darkness can linger, and summer light can seem endless. Yet snowy owls live there with a confidence that feels almost mythic. Their thick plumage protects them against brutal cold, and their broad wings carry them low across open ground where lemmings and other prey move through the short northern season. In summer, they may hunt under a sun that barely sets. In winter, they endure a landscape many creatures can barely survive. Their white plumage also gives them a presence unlike any other owl, especially against snow and pale sky, where they appear less like birds of forest darkness and more like predators shaped from the tundra itself. To thrive there, an animal must be more than tough. It must be exquisitely suited to scarcity, cold, distance, and light extremes. Snowy owls meet all of those demands with astonishing grace. Short-eared owls quarter grasslands like feathered patrol planes. There are owls that wait in ambush, still as carved wood. Then there are short-eared owls, which often hunt by actively sweeping low over fields in a searching pattern. They move back and forth across open ground with a loose, buoyant flight, as though inspecting every strip of grass beneath them. This method is called quartering, and it gives the bird a way to cover wide areas where small mammals may be hidden and moving. Seen from a distance, the owl can resemble a feathered patrol craft crossing the same terrain again and again, adjusting course with each hint of movement below. The behavior feels purposeful and open, very different from the secretive perch hunting many people associate with owls. It also makes these birds unusually visible at times, especially near dusk. Instead of vanishing into woodland shadow, they become part of the wide evening landscape itself, drifting over grass in a search pattern that looks both methodical and strangely elegant. Long-eared owls vanish into branches with extraordinary camouflage. A long-eared owl can be sitting in a tree directly above you, and you may never know it. During the day, these birds often roost close to the trunk, draw themselves upright, and let their streaked plumage merge with bark, twigs, and shadow. The ear tufts rise, the body narrows, and suddenly the owl seems less like an animal than a broken branch with eyes. This is camouflage not just of color, but of posture. The bird actively reshapes its own outline to become harder to notice. In dense evergreens or tangled cover, the effect can be astonishing. Even experienced birdwatchers may scan a roost tree for several minutes before the hidden form finally resolves itself. That disappearing act is more than a visual trick. Daytime concealment matters in a world where crows, jays, and other birds may harass any owl they discover. To survive the bright hours, the long-eared owl becomes almost invisible, turning stillness itself into a form of defense. Northern hawk owls hunt by day with falcon-like focus. Not all owls wait for dusk. Northern hawk owls hunt readily in daylight, especially across the open northern habitats, where long summer days make darkness an unreliable ally. Their behavior feels unusual enough that the name makes sense immediately. Perched high, they scan with intense concentration, then launch in swift, direct pursuit that recalls the style of a small hawk more than the drifting mystery people expect from an owl. The body is streamlined, the tail is relatively long, and the hunting posture suggests alert daylight pursuit rather than secretive ambush. This makes the species feel like a fascinating crossover, as though owl design has been tuned toward a more diurnal rhythm without losing its essential identity. It is a reminder that owls are not locked into one cinematic role. They can adapt to light, habitat, and prey in ways that produce surprising results. In the northern forests, one of them became a daytime hunter, with the focus of a raptor built for open view. Fish owls hunt along rivers for prey that swims. Most people hear the word owl and imagine rodents in fields or birds in trees. Fish owls push the imagination toward water. These large hunters patrol riverbanks, forest streams, and icy channels where fish move near the surface. Instead of listening for a vole under grass, they watch and wait near current, ready to seize prey from the water with powerful feet. In some places, they also take amphibians and other aquatic animals. But the image that stays with you is the simplest one. An owl at the edge of a river, hunting what swims. That shift in prey changes everything about the scene. The habitat becomes wetter, colder, and more effective. The hunt happens among stones, branches, and flowing water rather than dry fields and leaf litter. It expands the idea of what an owl can be. These birds are not merely night hunters transplanted to a stream. They are specialists shaped by waterside life, where movement flashes in ripples instead of rustling grass. Lackiston's fish owl is one of the largest owls alive. Some owls impress through mystery. Blackiston's fish owl overwhelms through presence. This giant of East Asia is among the largest living owls on Earth, with a massive body, heavy feet, and a look that feels almost prehistoric when seen beside a dark river. It haunts remote forests where old trees line waterways and fish-rich currents cut through the cold. In such places, the bird can seem less like a familiar owl and more like an ancient ruler of the riverbank. Size matters here because the prey can be substantial and the conditions can be demanding. A hunter that waits near winter water needs power, patience, and a landscape still rich enough to sustain it. That last part is crucial because the species depends on habitats that are increasingly fragile. Old forest, clean rivers, and space to live are all part of its survival. So the fascination it inspires carries a second feeling as well. Wonder, mixed with the knowledge that such giants are rare. Screech owls can look fierce, tiny, or almost invisible. A screech owl is a master of dramatic contradiction. It can appear fierce because of its upright posture, intense eyes, and pointed ear tufts. It can look tiny because many species are genuinely small, no bigger than a stout little songbird with talons. And it can become almost impossible to notice when it presses close to a tree and lets its plumage merge with bark patterns. The transformation between those states can happen in moments. 1 second you see an expressive little predator peering from a cavity. The next, the same bird seems to dissolve into the trunk around it. Part of the magic lies in texture. The feathers are barred and mottled in ways that echo wood grain, cracks, lichen, and shadow. Part lies in posture, because the bird knows how to narrow itself and hold still. This combination makes screech owls feel like forest spirits in miniature, always on the edge between being plainly visible and disappearing completely. Some owl species migrate, while others stay year-round. Not every owl responds to winter in the same way. Some remain rooted to one patch of forest or farmland through the changing seasons, defending the same territory year after year. Others move when food, weather, or daylight begin to shift against them. This contrast makes the owl world feel less fixed than people imagine. A resident bird may know every perch, every hedgerow, and every hunting route in its home range. A migrant must do something far riskier. It must leave familiar ground and cross great distances in search of better conditions. The decision is not dramatic in the human sense, yet it changes the whole rhythm of an owl's life. Stay and endure the hard months with local knowledge. Go and trust the landscape ahead to offer enough prey to survive. Across species, both strategies work. That is part of the fascination. Owls are not tied to one seasonal pattern. They meet winter in more than one way. Snowy owls sometimes move south in dramatic winter invasions. Every so often, the north releases a wave of white hunters. In certain winters, snowy owls appear far south of their usual Arctic haunts, turning up on coasts, airfields, farmland, and open country where people rarely expect to see them. These movements are often called eruptions, and they can feel almost mythical, as though the tundra itself has spilled into the lower world. The reasons are tied to food, breeding success, and shifting conditions in the far north. In years when prey has been abundant, many young birds may survive, and some later push south in search of new hunting ground. The result can be extraordinary. Bird watchers scan beaches and suddenly find a great white owl staring over the surf. Drivers pass a snowy field and see one perched on a fence post like a piece of winter brought to life. Such events remind us that even the most iconic owl is not locked in place. It can suddenly arrive where almost no one expected it. Young owls leave the nest before they can truly fly. For many birds, leaving the nest means being ready for the air. In many owls, that moment comes earlier and feels much less polished. The young may clamber out while their wings are still unsteady, before they can manage true, controlled flight. This stage can look chaotic if you do not know what you are seeing. A downy youngster appears outside the nest, balancing awkwardly, fluttering badly, and seeming far too vulnerable for the wider world. Yet this is often a normal part of owl development. Remaining packed together in a cramped nest can become risky as the chicks grow larger, so leaving early opens space and begins the next stage of learning. The young birds do not immediately become graceful hunters. They become explorers first, moving into the nearby branches, ledges, or cover around them. It is a fascinating in-between state, where they are no longer nest-bound, yet not fully capable. The owl story includes this messy chapter of boldness before mastery. Baby owls often climb branches long before mastering flight. There is a stage in an owl's youth when it behaves less like a bird of the air and more like a determined little climber. Before strong flight arrives, many young owls scramble through nearby branches using feet, beak, and wings in awkward cooperation. They pull themselves upward, flap for balance, and inch along with a seriousness that makes them seem both vulnerable and strangely brave. These youngsters are sometimes called branchers, and the name suits them perfectly. They have left the nest but have not yet earned the sky. Instead, they begin life in the world of bark, twigs, and uncertain footholds. This stage is important because it teaches coordination, strengthens muscles, and spreads siblings out into safer positions. It also gives the parents more room to continue feeding them. There is something compelling about this chapter of growth. A creature destined to become a silent hunter begins as a clumsy climber, learning its environment one branch at a time before air truly belongs to it. Owl chicks may be raised in a strict size hierarchy. In an owl nest, age can become power almost immediately. Eggs often hatch over a span of time rather than all at once, which means one chick may begin life with a head start of hours or even days. That early advantage grows quickly. The first hatched youngster becomes larger, stronger, and more capable of reaching food before its younger siblings. As the nestlings develop, a hierarchy can form that is as clear as any pecking order, though it is shaped more by timing than by temperament. The biggest chick often occupies the best position, receives food first, and dominates space simply through size. The smaller ones must work around that reality. This does not make owl family life cruel by design. It makes it efficient under uncertain conditions. If food becomes scarce, at least one chick has a strong chance of survival. The nest becomes a place where growth is not equal, and where a few days at the beginning can influence an entire season of life. In lean years, the oldest chick often gets the most food. Abundance can make a nest seem almost harmonious. Scarcity changes everything. When prey is hard to find, parents return with fewer meals, and the balance among siblings becomes far less forgiving. The oldest chick often has the advantage, not because the parents have chosen a favorite, but because size, strength, and position give that youngster the best chance to seize what arrives. A mouse dropped into the nest is not shared politely. It is claimed. The larger nestling reaches first, swallows faster, and can withstand the jostling that smaller siblings cannot. In difficult seasons, this can mean the first hatched young survive, while later chicks weaken. It is a hard truth, but it reveals something important about owl breeding. The system is built for uncertainty. Hatching at different times creates a natural fallback plan, allowing at least one robust youngster to thrive if food collapses. The nest, which seems so sheltered from outside forces, is in fact tightly bound to the fortunes of the hunting landscape around it. Owl parents can bring hundreds of prey items to one nest. A nest full of growing owlets is not sustained by one dramatic hunt. It is sustained by relentless repetition. Night after night, the parents must keep returning with food, sometimes carrying prey at a pace that seems almost impossible when you imagine the cumulative effort. In a successful season, a single nest may receive hundreds of small animals before the young are ready to fend for themselves. That means countless flights over fields, meadows, woodland edges, or marshes, each one ending with another mouse, vole, insect, or bird delivered to demanding mouths. The image of an owl often focuses on mystery and stillness, yet parenthood reveals another side entirely. It is labor. It is endurance. It is the conversion of hunting skill into a steady stream of calories for young that grow with astonishing speed. By the end of the nesting period, the scale of that work becomes staggering. What seemed like a quiet family hidden from view has actually been powered by an extraordinary volume of successful hunts. Some owls return to the same nest site for years. A good nest site is more than shelter. It is a proven address in a landscape that has already shown it can support life. That is why some owls return to the same cavity, ledge, burrow area, or nest location across multiple breeding seasons. The site may offer safety from weather, distance from disturbance, and quick access to productive hunting ground. To a human observer, that return can feel almost sentimental, but it is also practical. Why gamble on an unknown place if the old one still works? Over time, certain trees, cliffs, barns, or thickets become woven into the life history of individual birds or pairs. One season's success encourages another attempt in the same place. This gives owl breeding a sense of continuity, as though the landscape itself holds memory. A hollow that once sheltered chicks may do so again after winter has passed. The result is a hidden tradition, repeated not because the birds cling to the past, but because experience has taught them what works. Many owls do not build nests, they borrow them. When people imagine nest building, they often picture careful weaving, twigs placed with purpose, and a structure built from scratch. Many owls ignore that script entirely. Rather than constructing elaborate homes, they take advantage of what already exists. A hollow in a tree, an old crow nest, a cliff recess, a cavity in a building, or a burrow dug by another animal can all become suitable places to raise young. This borrowed approach reveals something appealingly direct about owl life. The birds are not architects in the usual sense. They are opportunists with standards. If a space is safe enough, sheltered enough, and well placed near food, it may be good enough to become a nursery. That choice also ties owls closely to the wider community of the habitat. Woodpeckers create cavities. Corvids build stick nests. Mammals dig tunnels. Later, owls move in and make use of the result. The nest, then, is often not an isolated creation, but part of a chain of lives shaping the same landscape. A cavity, cliff, burrow, or stick nest can all become owl nurseries. One of the most remarkable things about owls is how many different places they can turn into a cradle for the next generation. In one species, the chicks may hatch deep inside a tree hollow, surrounded by wood and darkness. In another, they may begin life on a narrow cliff ledge above open air. Elsewhere, they may grow underground in a borrowed tunnel, or high in a bulky old nest first built by hawks, crows, or ravens. This variety means there is no single owl nursery. Instead, each species adapts its family life to the opportunities of its habitat. Forest birds use cavities and broken trunks. Open country birds exploit ledges and burrows. Others accept stick platforms already tested by previous occupants. The result is a fascinating spread of domestic strategies across one bird group. What unites them is not the form of the nest, but the goal. Find a place hidden enough, stable enough, and close enough to prey, and life can begin there, whatever the shape of the shelter. Barn owls can swallow small prey whole, bones and all. A barn owl does not sit down to pick neatly at a mouse, the way many people might imagine. When prey is small enough, it often swallows it entire. Fur, bones, teeth, claws, and soft tissue all go down together in one efficient act. This tells you something important about how different an owl's relationship to prey really is. There is no need to strip away the inedible parts at the surface. The digestive system will sort that out later. For the bird, swallowing whole is fast, practical, and ideal for a hunter that may need to capture several animals in quick succession during a productive night. It also gives owl feeding a slightly startling quality when you first learn about it. The mouse does not become pieces. It disappears. What vanishes into the bird is not only flesh, but an entire tiny skeleton wrapped in fur. The process feels almost too complete, and that is part of what makes owl biology so captivating. Later, they cough up neat pellets of fur and bone. What the owl cannot digest does not simply pass through unnoticed. Hours after a meal, the indigestible remains are compressed inside the digestive tract into a dense little package of fur, bones, teeth, feathers, or insect parts. Then the bird brings this pellet back up and drops it, often beneath a favorite roost. The result is oddly tidy, like a small gray clue left behind by a hidden predator. There is something memorable about this process because it feels so precise. The digestible parts of the prey have been absorbed, while the rest is gathered into a compact record of what was eaten. Under a roosting branch or in the corner of an old barn, a scatter of pellets can mark the repeated presence of an owl, even when the bird itself is nowhere in sight. They are one of the quiet signatures owls leave in the world. Not footprints in mud, not torn remains, but these compressed little bundles that tell a food story in miniature. Owl pellets let scientists reconstruct meals in remarkable detail. To most people, a pellet looks like an unremarkable lump. To a scientist, it can open an entire hidden food web. Inside that compact mass are tiny skulls, jawbones, teeth, feather fragments, beetle shells, and other durable remains that survive digestion. With patience and a careful eye, researchers can tease those pieces apart and identify what the owl had been catching. A field scattered with pellets becomes more than a place where owls rest. It becomes an archive of local life. You can learn which small mammals live nearby, which prey species are abundant, and how diets change across seasons or habitats. In some cases, pellets even reveal animals that are rarely seen directly by humans. That is part of the wonder. The owl hunts for itself, yet without meaning to, it also samples the ecosystem around it. Each pellet is a compact biological report from the night shift, preserving evidence of creatures that were present, active, and vulnerable in the dark. Some owls eat insects, while others tackle rabbits and ducks. The word owl can suggest one kind of hunter, but their diets span a startling range. At one end are small species that live largely on insects, snatching moths, beetles, grasshoppers, and crickets with quick precision. At the other are powerful owls capable of taking prey as substantial as rabbits, waterfowl, and other large animals. This dietary spread reveals how flexible the owl design really is. The group includes tiny hunters suited to small, fluttering or crawling prey, and heavy-footed predators able to overpower animals many people would never expect an owl to attempt. That difference also changes the atmosphere around each species. One feels like a nimble nighttime insect specialist. Another feels like a top predator descending from a dark perch with serious force. Yet both are recognizably owls. Their worlds are connected by ancestry, but separated by scale and prey. This is one reason the subject never grows dull. The same basic body plan has diversified into hunters of profoundly different meals. The smallest owls often live on beetles, moths, and crickets. Tiny owls do not need large prey to become fascinating. In fact, their lives can feel even more vivid when you picture what they are actually chasing. A small owl moving through warm night air after beetles and moths is engaging with a world full of flickers, clicks, and sudden motion. These birds often hunt insects with a speed and alertness that suits their size perfectly. A cricket in grass, a moth drawn to a light, a beetle clattering from bark, all of these can become worthwhile targets. This makes their nights very different from those of the larger mouse-hunting species that dominate the public imagination. The prey is lighter, more numerous, and often airborne or active at close range. That can give the hunt a busy, nimble quality, almost like a tiny predator navigating a festival of wings and legs. It is a reminder that owl life does not always revolve around rodents in fields. Sometimes it unfolds in miniature, among insects and desert heat. Great horned owls will hunt animals surprisingly larger than expected. There are moments in owl biology when the scale of the prey forces you to reconsider what these birds can do. Great horned owls provide many of those moments. They are strong, bold predators with the ability to seize animals much larger than the average person expects an owl to handle. Rabbits, skunks, and substantial birds can all fall within their reach. This does not mean they only hunt large prey, but it does mean they occupy a more commanding role in their ecosystems than many people realize. A creature that seems elegant on a moonlit branch can also be a formidable force when it drops with intent. Their feet deliver much of that power, and their confidence as hunters broadens the menu in ways smaller owls could never attempt. The result is an owl that feels less like a specialist of tiny nighttime scurrying and more like a generalist predator of serious stature. It carries mystery, but also unmistakable authority. Some owls specialize so strongly they track one main prey cycle. Not every owl spreads its effort evenly across whatever happens to be available. Some become tightly linked to one key prey animal, especially in places where that prey rises and falls in dramatic natural cycles. In northern and open country systems, certain owls may depend heavily on small mammals such as voles or lemmings, following their booms and busts with striking fidelity. When the prey is abundant, breeding can surge and territories may fill with activity. When numbers fall, Those same owls may breed less, move farther, or disappear from an area entirely. This relationship gives the birds an almost tidal quality, as if their lives pulse in time with another species beneath them. It also shows how deeply connected a predator can become to the hidden rhythms of a landscape. The owl is not simply present or absent by chance. It is responding to a food clock set by the rise and fall of its favored prey, sometimes with remarkable sensitivity. When vole numbers crash, entire owl breeding seasons can falter. A landscape can look unchanged to human eyes and still be failing an owl. Grass stands tall. Fields stretch outward. The nest cavity remains in place. Yet if vole numbers collapse, the breeding season may unravel before it fully begins. For many small mammal hunters, these prey animals are the fuel that makes reproduction possible. Without enough of them, adults may delay nesting, lay fewer eggs, abandon attempts early, or skip breeding altogether. In severe shortages, even pairs already established in a territory may not be able to support a family. This is a powerful reminder that visible habitat is only part of the story. A healthy-looking meadow without enough prey is an empty promise. Owl reproduction depends not just on space, but on abundance at the right moment. The connection is so strong that ecologists can sometimes predict breeding success by following rodent cycles. What seems like a quiet year in the field may actually be a year when the entire next generation failed to materialize. A hunting owl may pause, listen, and strike in one fluid motion. There is a beautiful economy to the way an owl hunts when everything goes right. The bird does not always rush. It may stop first, perched and still, as if the night itself has frozen around it. Then something changes, though to us it may be invisible. A faint sound, a rustle below, a hidden movement translated into certainty. In the next instant, the body shifts from waiting to action without any wasted motion. The launch, descent, and impact can seem like one seamless event, so smooth that the pause and strike feel connected by an invisible thread. This is part of why owl hunting captivates people. It is not simply violent and not merely fast. It is controlled. The energy is stored, then released with perfect timing. Watching that sequence, even in imagination, tells you something profound about predator design. The pause is not inactivity. It is concentration gathering force, until the whole bird moves as though it had already decided the outcome. Many owls kill with their feet before using the beak. The beak looks formidable, but in many owls the feet deliver the decisive first blow. When prey is seized, the talons do the critical work of grabbing, pinning, and often killing before the beak becomes important. This makes the legs and feet far more central to the hunt than casual observers might assume. The strike is not just a snatch. It is an impact with curved claws and powerful grip aimed at ending struggle quickly. Once the prey is subdued, the beak helps tear larger food into manageable pieces or position it for swallowing. This order matters because it reveals how the owl body is organized around the moment of capture. The face may dominate our imagination, but the feet are the true weapons at the instant of contact. That shift in emphasis changes the whole picture of the bird. An owl does not simply peck its prey to death. It descends as a force of grasping power, with the final act beginning in the talons. Owl talons lock with crushing force around struggling prey. The real grip of an owl begins at the moment of impact. When the feet close around prey, the curved talons do more than puncture. They hold with a force that can be difficult for a struggling animal to break, especially once the toes tighten and the prey's movement only drives the claws in deeper. This grip is what turns a fast strike into possession. A mouse, bird, or rabbit may still twist and kick, but the owl has arrived with a set of weapons built to pin life to the earth in an instant. It is easy to focus on wings and eyes because they are so dramatic, yet the hunt often succeeds because of this final mechanical certainty. The prey is not merely caught, it is secured. That power also explains why owls can manage animals that seem unexpectedly vigorous or difficult to control. The feet do not just seize. They end resistance by turning contact into an inescapable hold. Their beaks are short, hooked, and partly hidden by feathers. An owl's face gives so much attention to the eyes that the beak can seem almost strangely modest, tucked away in the center like a secret. Yet that compact shape is no accident. The beak is short, sharply hooked, and powerful enough to tear flesh, trim prey into swallowable pieces, and strip away what the bird does not want to eat first. Its smaller outward profile also leaves room for the feathers around the face to keep doing their other jobs without a large projecting bill interfering. This gives the whole front of the head a different look from hawks and eagles, whose beaks announce themselves immediately. On an owl, the weapon hides in plain sight. That concealment adds to the uncanny quality of the bird. It looks soft and composed until feeding begins, and then the small hook at the center proves exactly what kind of animal you are dealing with. Quiet design can still conceal a brutally efficient tool. Owls often hide a fierce body beneath a deceptively soft outline. At rest, many owls look plush, rounded, and almost gentle enough to invite completely wrong assumptions. Feathers puff outward and blur the true lines of the body, softening everything into an image of calm. Under that softness, though, is something far leaner and more formidable. There is a muscular chest driving the wings, strong legs waiting beneath the plumage, and a compact predator's frame arranged for sudden control and precision. This contrast is part of what makes owls so fascinating. They wear an outer shape that seems harmless, then reveal in motion that they were built for capture all along. The visual trick matters in nature too. A broadened feather coat can help with insulation and disguise, while the body inside remains all function. It is like seeing a winter cloak conceal a fighter. The softness is real, but it is not the whole story. Beneath it lives a hunter whose design is sharpened, efficient, and entirely serious. Their necks are flexible because they have extra neck vertebrae. An owl's head movement feels uncanny because it exceeds what we instinctively think a bird or any animal should manage. One reason is simple and structural. These birds have more neck vertebrae than humans do, which gives them a wider range of motion and lets the head pivot through astonishing angles without the whole body having to turn. That flexibility matters because the eyes are so fixed and forward-oriented. The neck becomes the mechanism that restores a broad view of the world. Instead of glancing, the bird pivots. Instead of shifting its eyes around the scene, it re-aims the entire face. The result is not only practical, but theatrical. A perched owl can seem motionless for long stretches, then suddenly rotate toward a sound in a way that makes the movement feel almost impossible. Yet beneath the drama is a clear anatomical solution. If the eyes cannot roam, the neck must do the work, and evolution answered by giving the bird a more flexible column to turn with. Special blood vessel adaptations protect the brain during huge head turns. Turning a head through extreme angles creates a dangerous problem. Blood still has to reach the brain and eyes, even when arteries might otherwise be twisted, stretched, or compressed. In owls, the vascular system includes features that help reduce that risk, allowing circulation to keep flowing during movements that would be far more hazardous in many other animals. This is one of those facts that makes the famous owl head turn even more astonishing. It is not just a matter of flexible bones and joints. The soft plumbing inside the neck has also been shaped to cope with extraordinary motion. Without that protection, the dramatic swivel that fascinates people would threaten the very organs it is meant to help. Instead, the bird can continue scanning with confidence. There is something marvelous about that hidden layer of design. The owl does not simply look unusual on the outside. Deep inside the neck, unseen structures have been refined to support the behavior that makes the whole animal feel almost supernaturally capable. Owl legs can look shockingly long once the feathers are gone. Most people carry around a slightly mistaken picture of owl proportions. The heavy feathering makes the legs look short and tucked close to the body, as if the bird were mostly head and torso. Remove that soft covering in your imagination, and the shape changes dramatically. Many owls have surprisingly long legs hidden beneath the plumage, sometimes long enough to startle people the first time they see the true structure in a museum specimen or close scientific image. Those lengthened limbs are useful for striking, reaching into vegetation or snow, and handling prey with more control than the feathered silhouette suggests. This hidden anatomy adds another layer to the owl's weird charm. It is a bird that keeps revealing unexpected truths once you look beneath the obvious outline. The face seems almost mammalian. The flight is ghost-like. Then the legs turn out to be far longer than expected. Owls continually remind us that appearances can conceal a stranger design waiting just below the surface. The feathery mask of an owl is an acoustic tool. What looks like expression on an owl's face is also engineering. The broad mask of feathers surrounding the eyes acts like a structured listening surface, helping gather faint sounds and guide them inward with greater efficiency. This means the face is not merely a stage for that intense stare. It is part of a sensory instrument built to turn whispers in grass, snow, bark, or darkness into usable information. The more you think about that, the stranger it becomes. A human face is read for emotion. An owl's face can also be read that way, but beneath the impression lies another purpose entirely. The roundness, symmetry, and arrangement of feathers have practical value in the act of hunting. It is one reason owls feel so distinctive among birds. Their faces do not just look different, they function differently. The mask becomes a working surface, shaping the bird's experience of the world. In an owl, appearance and perception meet on the same remarkable piece of anatomy. Some owl feathers feel more like velvet than ordinary plumage. Run a finger across many bird feathers and you would feel something light, smooth, and clearly feather-like. In some owls, the sensation can be unexpectedly different. Parts of the plumage have a softness so fine and muted that people often compare it to velvet. That texture is not there for luxury. It helps reduce noise and contributes to the silent, muffled quality of owl movement through air and against the environment. There is something almost mischievous about this. A top predator of the night is dressed in material that sounds more suited to a theater curtain than a weapon of pursuit. Yet the comparison fits because the surface really can seem that soft. This is part of the owl's larger contradiction. It is a bird that kills with force, but is wrapped in textures of remarkable delicacy. Touch and function come together in a way that feels almost poetic. The velvet impression is real, and it serves a hunter that survives by avoiding attention, not attracting it. Soft plumage also helps many owls survive bitter winter cold. Silence is only one gift of owl plumage. In harsh climates, those layers of soft feathers also become life-saving insulation. Air trapped within the plumage forms a warm buffer around the body, slowing heat loss during long nights when freezing wind and snow would punish any exposed animal. This matters especially for species living in northern forests, tundra, and mountain country, where winter can press hard for months. An owl may sit motionless on a branch while the temperature plunges, yet inside that thick feather coat, it retains the warmth needed to stay alert and ready to hunt. This makes the bird's softness more than a sensory adaptation. It becomes winter armor, though armor built from loft rather than hardness. There is something deeply impressive in that design. The same feathers that help muffle sound also help hold heat, allowing one structure to serve more than one critical purpose. In the owl, comfort and survival are not separate. They are woven together in the plumage itself. Even an owl's wing edges are shaped for stealth. The wing of an owl is not simply broad and strong. It is finely edited along the margins in ways that help reduce the sound of flight. The leading edge carries tiny comb-like structures that disturb the rush of air before it grows into a louder hiss. The trailing edge breaks up the remaining flow into softer fragments, blurring what would otherwise be a more obvious wing noise. This means stealth begins at the boundary where feather meets wind. The edges are not decorative details. They are part of the silent strategy. It is a beautiful reminder that nature can engineer power through refinement rather than brute force. A wing could have been enough if it merely lifted the bird. Instead, the owl's wing was shaped to move through the night while hiding its own passage. That changes the whole feeling of flight. The bird does not just fly well. It flies with a kind of acoustic restraint, as though even the outermost line of the wing has been taught to whisper. Owls do not all hoot. Some hiss, bark, shriek, or whistle. Ask someone to imagine an owl, and they will often hear a hoot in their mind before they see the bird itself. That familiar sound is real, but it is only one voice in a much stranger chorus. Across the owl world, calls can be harsh, nasal, barking, screeching, whistling, or hissing, sometimes sounding more like mammals, ghosts, or broken machinery than the classic woodland hoot of popular culture. This matters because it reveals how misleading our simple image of owl sound really is. A person expecting one deep note from every species may be startled to discover a bird that shrieks through the dark, like something out of nightmare, or barks from a tree, as if a small dog had climbed into the branches. The diversity of those voices makes the night feel much less predictable. Owls are not a one-sound group. They are a collection of species with radically different acoustic identities, each shaped by habitat, social needs, and ancient lineage. A barn owl's scream sounds nothing like a storybook hoot. The first time many people hear a barn owl at night, they do not think owl at all. They think of a scream, sharp and eerie, moving across darkness in a way that can stop a person in their tracks. It is one of the great corrections nature offers to human expectation. Storybooks, cartoons, and old tales have prepared us for rounded hoots from shadowy branches. Then a barn owl tears through that expectation with a call that sounds raw, haunting, and almost alarmingly human in its emotional effect. The bird itself may be gliding over a field in pale silence, but the voice it releases belongs to a different register entirely. That mismatch between elegant appearance and unsettling sound is part of its power. It reminds us that the real natural world rarely follows our simplified symbols. Barn owls do not perform the role we assign them in folklore. They announce themselves in a voice that feels much older, stranger, and far more unforgettable. Some tiny owls make calls that sound oddly pupper-like. Not every owl voice deepens the mystery of the night. Some of the smallest species produce calls so high and quirky that the sound can seem almost playful, even vaguely pupper-like to human ears. This is one of those details that instantly expands the subject. A bird group associated with solemn stairs and haunted forests suddenly includes tiny callers whose notes can resemble little yips or soft, dog-like barks. That effect comes partly from scale. Small bodies tend to produce smaller, thinner sounds, and in the stillness of night, those calls can seem surprisingly bright and animated. The result is delightful because it resists cliché so completely. Instead of a gloomy hoot from some giant shadow, you get a tiny owl sounding almost domestic from a dark tree. Yet the bird remains fully itself, alert and predatory despite the charming voice. These moments are part of why owls are so endlessly engaging. Just when the image becomes too fixed, another species arrives and changes the soundtrack completely. Mated owls often duet to defend territory together. In the darkness, a territory can be announced not by one voice, but by two. In some owl species, mated pairs call in patterns that overlap, answer or complement one another, producing a duet that tells rivals the area is already occupied by an established team. There is something powerful about that sound. It is not simply noise drifting through trees. It is a declaration of partnership, presence, and boundary. One bird calls, the other answers, and together they create a vocal wall around the space they claim. The duet may also reinforce the pair bond itself, keeping the birds coordinated in a world where they may often be separated by darkness, cover, and distance. To human listeners, such calling can feel hauntingly beautiful, especially when the notes rise from opposite sides of a woodland and meet in the middle. Yet beneath that, beauty is strategy. The pair is not performing for us. It is telling the night that this ground and this future nest site are already spoken for. Owls can recognize rivals and neighbors by voice alone. To us, many owl calls may sound similar if we hear them only once or twice. To an owl, the night is likely full of distinctions. Individual voices can carry information about who is calling, where they are, and whether they belong nearby or represent a fresh intrusion. This matters because territorial life is expensive. If every sound demanded a full aggressive response, the bird would waste time and energy constantly confronting familiar neighbors. Instead, voice recognition can help sort the ordinary from the threatening. A known rival at the usual boundary may be tolerated in a way a stranger is not. That means an owl listening in darkness is doing more than locating sound. It is interpreting identity. This makes their acoustic world feel richer and more social than many people assume. The woods are not just full of anonymous hoots and screams. They are full of known individuals with reputations, routines, and recognizable signatures in their calls. The night, then, is partly a world of remembered voices. A forest at night may hold several owl species at once. Step into a forest after dark, and it can seem empty at first, as if all activity has withdrawn into silence. In reality, the same woods may support several owl species at once, each using the habitat in a slightly different way. One may favor deep cover near the trunk line. Another may patrol edges and openings. A third may prefer higher perches, wetter areas, or different prey altogether. Because of these subtle divisions, multiple hunters can coexist in the same broader landscape without becoming exact copies of one another. This layered occupation makes the forest more complex than it sounds or looks from a casual nighttime walk. Above you, beyond you, and perhaps quite close, different owl lives may be unfolding simultaneously. One voice from a distance may belong to a larger species, while another from denser cover comes from something smaller and more secretive. The result is a nocturnal community hidden inside the same trees, each owl carving its own role from the shared darkness. Some owls call more in autumn than people expect. Spring is the season people usually associate with birdsong and territorial calling, so autumn can feel like a time when voices should be fading. Yet for some owls, the later part of the year brings a noticeable rise in calling. This can happen because territories are being reasserted, pair bonds are being strengthened, or young birds are still interacting with the landscape in new ways. Cool nights carry sound beautifully, and a call heard in autumn darkness can feel especially vivid because the season itself seems quieter. Leaves have dropped, insects are fewer, and the air feels sharper, so an owl voice travels with unusual clarity. For many listeners, this is surprising. They assume the great season of owl sound belongs only to spring. Then an evening in October or November proves otherwise. The effect can be wonderfully atmospheric. Autumn woods, already full of change, suddenly reveal that owls are not waiting silently for winter. Some are actively speaking into the shifting season. Vocal displays can reveal courtship, warning, hunger, or alarm. An owl's call is not just a sound. It is often a message shaped by context. The same species may use different vocalizations to attract a mate, defend a territory, warn of danger, answer a partner, or express hunger at the nest. This gives owl communication a depth many people do not immediately suspect. The bird is not simply making noise because darkness has fallen. It is selecting from a repertoire that fits the moment. A low territorial note carries a different meaning from a sharp alarm sound, or the persistent food begging of the young. Even within a single night, the emotional atmosphere around a nest or territory can shift through these vocal changes. To a practiced listener, the soundscape becomes more readable, almost like overhearing fragments of a hidden language. That is one of the great pleasures of paying attention to owls. The more closely you listen, the less random the calling seems. Voices begin to reveal purpose, relationship, and urgency woven through the dark. Young owls beg with sounds that can seem surprisingly eerie. There is a particular kind of owl sound that can unsettle people precisely because they do not expect it to come from a nestling. Young owls, especially when hungry, can produce repeated begging calls that rise from trees, cavities, or hidden perches, with a tone that feels thin, ghostly, and strangely persistent. In some species, the effect can be genuinely eerie, like a whistle, hiss, or wavering cry hanging in the dark. For the chicks, though, it is not haunting at all. It is practical. The sound tells the parents where they are and how urgently they want food. Since the young may be spread out beyond the nest by this stage, calling becomes an essential way to stay connected. To human ears, the emotional effect is almost accidental, yet memorable. People walking under a tree at dusk may hear those repeated cries and imagine something far more mysterious than a cluster of demanding youngsters. Owls, even in childhood, have a gift for sounding older and stranger than they are. Some owl calls travel vast distances through cold night air. Cold night air can carry sound with remarkable clarity, and owl calls are perfectly placed to take advantage of that. In open country, across frozen fields or through still winter woods, a single call may travel much farther than people expect, floating outward with a sharpness that makes the distance hard to judge. A bird that seems nearby may actually be far off, and a voice from the dark can create the strange feeling that the landscape itself has begun to speak. This long reach matters for territory, mate contact, and the simple need to announce presence across large spaces where visual signals would fail completely. It also helps explain why owl voices leave such a strong mark on memory. A call heard at night is not just a sound. It is an event in the air, shaped by temperature, darkness, and distance. The farther it travels, the more it seems to belong to the whole landscape, not merely to the bird that made it. Ancient people often linked owls with wisdom, death, or prophecy. Long before field guides and bird cameras, people met owls as voices in darkness and sudden faces in torchlight. That alone was enough to make them feel different from other birds. They appeared when most creatures had gone quiet. their eyes faced forward. Their calls arrived from invisible perches. In many cultures, that combination pushed the owl beyond ordinary nature and into the realm of meaning. Some people saw knowledge in the steady stare, as though the bird understood secrets hidden from daylight minds. Others heard doom in its nighttime call and treated it as a messenger from the world of the dead. Still others linked it to prophesy, because a creature of darkness seemed close to mystery by definition. What matters is not that everyone agreed. They did not. What matters is that across distant places, humans kept feeling the same pressure to explain this bird in larger terms. Owls did not remain mere animals in the imagination. They became symbols almost as soon as people named them. Athena's owl became one of history's most famous bird symbols. In the ancient Greek world, one owl rose above natural history and entered the realm of civilization itself. The bird associated with Athena, goddess of wisdom, strategy, and crafts, became a powerful emblem of intelligence and clear sight. It appeared on coins, art, and public imagery, which meant the owl was no longer just a creature in the dark. It became a symbol people carried in their hands, stamped into silver and linked to the identity of a city. There is something striking about that choice. Not an eagle of raw power, not a dove of softness. An owl, a bird of the margins of day, with a face that looks alert even in stillness. The symbolism makes a kind of sense when you sit with it. Wisdom is not only brightness. It is also perception, patience, and the ability to see what others miss. Through Athena, the owl entered cultural memory so deeply that thousands of years later, it still stands for intellect almost automatically. In other cultures, owl calls were treated as ominous warnings. Not everyone heard wisdom in the night. In many traditions, an owl's voice carried a darker weight. A call from the trees after sunset could be heard as a warning of misfortune, illness, death, or spiritual disturbance. That response was not foolish. It grew from the conditions of real human life. Imagine a world with little artificial light, long dark hours, and a much closer daily relationship to death and uncertainty. Then, hear a sudden cry from an unseen bird whose face you rarely glimpse by day. It is easy to understand why people gave that moment meaning. The sound did not feel casual. It felt directed. Across different cultures, the details varied, but the emotional charge was often similar. The owl's voice entered the space where fear and interpretation meet. This tells us something important about owls and about ourselves. A natural sound can become a cultural force when it arrives from darkness, carries unfamiliar tones, and refuses to explain itself. The same bird has inspired reverence, fear, and folklore worldwide. Few animals reveal human imagination as clearly as the owl does. In one place, it becomes wise. In another, dangerous. In another, sacred, lucky, ghostly, or prophetic. The same basic bird with the same hooked beak, forward gaze, and nighttime habits has generated completely different emotional worlds depending on where people encountered it. That makes owls fascinating twice over. First as living animals, and then as mirrors for the cultures that watched them. A farmer hearing one near a house might feel dread. A scholar might adopt it as a sign of insight. A storyteller might place it between worlds, half bird and half omen. None of these responses came from nowhere. They grew out of the bird's real habits, its silence, its darkness, its strange face, and its unforgettable calls. Yet once folklore took hold, the owl became larger than zoology. It entered myth, ritual, and memory. Everywhere humans lived with owls, they seemed compelled to turn them into stories. Cave art and old carvings show humans noticed owls early. Owls have been watching human beings for a very long time, and the feeling was mutual. Ancient art suggests that people noticed them early enough for the birds to enter visual culture long before modern science began naming species and measuring wings. When an animal appears in cave imagery, carved objects, or early decorative work, it tells you something important. It mattered. It stood out from the flow of ordinary life strongly enough to be remembered, repeated, and shaped into image. That is especially striking with owls, because they are not always easy to see. Many are secretive by day and active when visibility is poor. Yet humans still observed enough to recognize the face, posture, and mood that make an owl unmistakable. This means the fascination is ancient. People were not drawn only to grand herd animals or obvious predators. They also made room for this quiet bird of the night. Even in deep time, the owl was already memorable enough to preserve in art. Medieval artists gave owls meanings far beyond natural history. By the medieval period, the owl had become far more than a bird in art. It could stand for moral darkness, spiritual blindness, isolation, hidden knowledge, or the strange pull of the night. Artists placed it into manuscripts, carvings, and symbolic scenes where the bird carried meaning far beyond anything a naturalist would record. Sometimes it appeared in opposition to daylight creatures. Sometimes it stood for people or states of mind judged suspicious, secretive, or outside the ordinary order of things. This is fascinating because it shows how completely human culture can transform an animal. The real owl remained what it always was, a hunter shaped by evolution. Yet on the page and in stone, it became an argument, a warning, or a symbol in a larger moral world. Medieval people were not illustrating birds for simple accuracy. They were reading creation for lessons, and the owl fit beautifully into that habit of mind. Its darkness and difference made it irresistible to symbolic thinking. Modern logos still borrow the owl as shorthand for wisdom. The ancient symbolic life of the owl never truly disappeared. It simply changed mediums. Today, the bird still appears in school emblems, publishing marks, academic clubs, educational apps, and countless logos that want to suggest intelligence at a glance. One compact silhouette can do an enormous amount of cultural work. Add round eyes, a perched posture, and a few suggestive feather shapes, and people instantly read learning, seriousness, or insight. That is remarkable when you think about it. Most people using such symbols are not choosing the owl because they have spent years studying real owl behavior. They are drawing on a symbolic inheritance so old that it now feels almost natural. The bird has become visual shorthand for thoughtfulness itself. Yet the logo owl is usually clean, harmless, and composed, far removed from the actual predator that swallows prey whole and rules the dark with silent force. Modern design keeps the symbol alive, even while the living animal remains much stranger than the icon. Yet real owls are hunters first, not feathery philosophers. For all the symbolism layered onto them, owls live by the same hard rule as other predators. They must find food, catch it, and survive. The wise old owl of storybooks may sit in calm abstraction, but the real bird is built around the practical urgency of hunting. Its face listens. Its wings hide sound. Its feet close with force. Its schedule follows prey, weather, and season, rather than the human love of meaning. This does not make the owl less interesting. It makes it more impressive. The living bird does not need our symbolism to become memorable. It is already extraordinary in its own right. In fact, the contrast is part of the appeal. We made the owl into a philosopher because it looks composed and observant, yet underneath that expression is an animal wholly committed to the business of predation. The stillness is real, but it is not contemplation in the human sense. It is concentration, patience, and a body waiting for the exact moment to act. Folklore often exaggerates what owls are and misses what they do. Stories can enlarge a creature so much that the real marvel almost gets hidden. Owls have been turned into spirits, prophets, judges of character, and harbingers of death, which makes for powerful folklore but often distracts from the actual brilliance of their biology. People may remember the omen and forget the acoustic face. They may recall a ghost story and miss the precision of the feet, the insulation of the plumage, or the way a young owl climbs before it flies. In that sense, folklore both honors and obscures the bird. It keeps the owl important in memory, but it may replace the animal with a symbol so dramatic that the living behavior fades behind it. That is a pity, because what owls actually do is astonishing enough. They navigate darkness with exquisite sensory control, adapt to habitats from tundra to desert, and raise families under conditions that can be harsh and uncertain. Reality does not need embellishment here. The truth already arrives carrying wonder. Science has made owls stranger, not less magical. There is a common fear that explanation kills wonder, as though studying something deeply will flatten it into mechanics and remove its mystery. Owls prove the opposite. The more science has learned about them, the more extraordinary they have become. Instead of vague mystery, we now have precise astonishment. We know that feathers can soften airflow into near silence. We know that asymmetrical ears can map hidden prey in 3 dimensions. We know that young birds scramble through branches before proper flight, that some species depend on rodent cycles, and that ancient symbolism only captured a fraction of what makes these birds remarkable. Each discovery sharpens the sense of marvel rather than reducing it. The owl does not become ordinary when understood. It becomes more richly strange. That is one of the great pleasures of natural history. Knowledge does not pull the moonlight out of the bird. It reveals how many extraordinary structures and behaviors are already waiting there, hidden beneath the old stories and the dark. Owls are birds of prey, but they are not eagles at night. It is tempting to think of owls as the nighttime version of hawks and eagles, as though day hunters simply have dark shift equivalents. That comparison is useful up to a point, but it misses how different owls really are. They do share the predatory toolkit of hooked beak and powerful feet, yet their solutions to hunting are not just day-like raptor traits moved into darkness. Their wings are shaped for quiet approach in a way most hawks do not need. Their facial structure and ear placement can make sound as important as sight. Their posture, feathering, and methods of searching the world reflect a different set of pressures. In other words, they are not merely eagles with moonlight. They are a separate answer to the challenge of catching living prey. That matters because it deepens our respect for them. Owls did not inherit a ready-made role and wait for sunset. They evolved a distinct predatory identity built around stealth, listening, patience, and the unique physics of darkness. Different owl species divide habitats with remarkable precision. A landscape may look uniform to us and still contain many separate owl worlds inside it. Different species often sort themselves across habitat features with surprising exactness, each favoring a slightly different combination of cover, prey, perch type, and hunting space. One may prefer dense woodland interior. Another may use open edges near fields. A third may work marshy margins or broken scrub. This division is not random. It reduces direct competition and lets several species use the same broad region without becoming ecological copies of one another. The precision can be subtle enough that most people never notice it. They think of forest, farmland, or grassland as single categories. Owls experience those places as mosaics of opportunity. A particular stand of older trees, a line of hedges, a wet meadow, or a patch of rough ground may matter enormously to one species and hardly at all to another. The habitat, then, is not one place. It is many overlapping owl maps laid on top of the same land. One forest can support owl species hunting at different heights. Even in a single block of woodland, owls do not always share the air in the same way. One species may work close to the ground, listening among leaf litter and low cover. Another may favor the middle layers of trunks and branches. Another may use more open routes near the canopy edge or hunt outward from the forest into nearby clearings. This vertical division is one of the elegant ways nature makes room for multiple predators in the same place. The forest is not only spread across the ground, it is stacked upward into layers, and different owls may specialize within those layers. That means the night woods can hold several hidden dramas at once, each playing out at a different height above the earth. The idea itself is captivating. One bird passes beneath branches, another waits halfway up, another patrols the upper openings, and most people walking below never suspect how the space above them has been partitioned. A forest after dark is not single-level wilderness. It is a vertical hunting world. Size often decides which prey an owl can afford to chase. Predation is not just about appetite. It is about what the body can realistically overpower, carry, swallow, or tear apart without wasting too much energy. That is why size matters so much in the owl world. A tiny species built around insects and small invertebrates cannot casually switch to prey that would injure it. A larger owl can consider rabbits, ducks, or other substantial animals because its frame, grip, and overall power make such risks worthwhile. In that sense, body size sets the boundaries of ambition. It shapes not only what an owl eats, but how it behaves, where it hunts, and what kind of role it plays in the ecosystem. This makes size feel more meaningful than a simple measurement on a chart. It becomes an ecological passport. A small owl belongs to one menu and one mode of life. A large one enters a different world of prey and possibility. The result is a group of birds whose diets widen dramatically as bodies scale upward. Some owls thrive near farms, while others need ancient forest. Human landscapes do not affect all owls the same way. Some species do quite well around farmland, pasture, barns, hedgerows, and rough grass where rodents are plentiful and hunting space stays open. These birds can even seem to benefit from a patchwork shaped partly by people. Other owls are tied to something far older and harder to replace. They need large tracts of mature forest, old trees with cavities, deep shade, stable prey communities, and the layered structure that only long-standing woodland can provide. Put those two realities side by side, and the owl world becomes much more complex than a simple story of success or decline. One species may patrol fence lines happily. Another may disappear when the forest is simplified just a little too much. This contrast matters because it shows that habitat quality is not one universal thing. The land that suits one owl beautifully may be useless to another. Conservation begins with recognizing that not every owl wants the same version of the world. A single lost tree cavity can matter to breeding owls. To most people, an old cavity in a tree may look like a minor detail, a hollow in bark, perhaps the remnant of decay or woodpecker work. To a breeding owl, that opening can be the difference between nesting and not nesting at all. Cavities offer shelter, concealment, and a stable chamber where eggs and chicks can survive weather and danger. In landscapes where large old trees are scarce, each suitable hollow becomes disproportionately important. Lose one, and you have not just removed a feature of a tree. You may have erased an actual breeding opportunity from the map. This is one of those ecological truths that changes how you see a forest. It is no longer just a mass of trunks and leaves. It becomes a set of potential homes, some ordinary and some crucial. The owl does not need the average tree in the same way it needs the right tree. That single cavity can hold a season, a brood, and the future of birds that depend on irreplaceable shelter. Rodent booms can trigger sudden bursts of owl nesting. Sometimes the land becomes rich so quickly that the owls respond almost at once. In years when voles, mice, or lemmings surge in number, nesting activity can rise sharply. Pairs that might otherwise skip breeding may attempt it. Clutch sizes can increase. More young may survive. The whole landscape seems to shift into a season of opportunity. This is one of the most exciting things about owl ecology, because it shows how tightly these birds are tuned to abundance. They do not breed in a vacuum of instinct alone. They read the food world around them, and when conditions are favorable, they act. The result can feel almost explosive. A place that seemed quiet the year before may suddenly hold more calling, more territorial behavior, and more nests hidden in its fields, forests, or tundra. The owls are not causing the boom, but they are responding to it with remarkable speed. Plenty below ground can echo upward into a sudden flourishing of life in the air. Harsh winters can reshape owl movements across entire regions. Winter is not just a season an owl endures. It can become a force that redraws where birds go, how far they travel, and whether familiar places remain usable at all. Deep snow may bury prey. Prolonged cold can raise the energy cost of survival. Ice and wind may make open hunting grounds less productive than they seemed in autumn. Under those pressures, owl movements can shift across broad regions. Birds may push south, drift toward coasts, gather in unusual numbers, or abandon areas that no longer offer enough food. To people watching from below, these changes can seem sudden and mysterious. A species that felt absent appears in numbers. Another that was regular grows scarce. Yet behind that pattern lies the quiet arithmetic of winter. Energy out, food in, and the balance between them. Harsh seasons can therefore shape not just individual survival, but the visible map of owl presence across whole landscapes. The birds do not ignore winter. They are constantly negotiating with it. Fire, logging, and grassland change can redraw owl territory maps. An owl territory is not a line on paper to the bird. It is a lived arrangement of perch sites, cover, prey, roosts, nest options, and hunting routes. Change the land, and that arrangement may no longer hold. Fire can open dense cover or erase critical shelter. Logging can remove old trees, alter forest structure, or create new edges that favor some species while harming others. Grassland change can shift rodent abundance, shrub cover, and the visibility needed for hunting. All of this means that owl territory maps are surprisingly dynamic. They expand, contract, move, or disappear as the physical world beneath them is rewritten. This gives habitat change a more intimate meaning. It does not just affect population numbers in the abstract. It alters the actual spaces individual birds know and use. A once familiar route through woodland or field may cease to function after one season of disturbance. For owls, the map is alive, and human decisions can redraw it faster than the birds can always adapt. Owl survival often depends on habitats humans barely notice. We tend to notice dramatic landscapes first, great forests, mountain slopes, sweeping tundra, or wide marshes. Yet many owls survive because of smaller, quieter habitat pieces that people overlook completely. A rough strip of grass along a ditch, a hedgerow between fields, a dead tree left standing, a forgotten orchard edge, a patch of scrub beside a road, a single cavity in an old trunk. These are not grand wilderness icons, but they can hold prey, shelter, roost sites, and the fine structure that makes daily owl life possible. This is one of the most humbling things about their survival. It often depends not on our admiration for the obvious, but on the persistence of the overlooked. If those small places are cleared, tidied, drained, or removed, the loss may seem minor to us and enormous to the birds. Owls remind us that ecological importance does not always announce itself. Sometimes the future of a hunter depends on a neglected corner of land most people would walk past without a thought. Burrowing owls sometimes decorate their homes with unexpected objects. A burrowing owl home can look less like a simple hole in the ground and more like a curious little front porch. Around the entrance, these birds sometimes scatter bits of debris such as dung, scraps of trash, feathers, paper, or other odd objects gathered from the surrounding land. At first it looks almost comical, as though the owl has developed a taste for decoration. Yet this behavior appears to have practical value. In some cases, mammal droppings may help attract insects, which then become easy food near the burrow itself. Other items may simply collect because the birds investigate and carry what interests them. Whatever the reason in each case, the result is unforgettable. You picture an owl not in a lofty tree hollow, but standing beside a burrow ringed with little chosen objects, like a tiny landlord with very unusual design sense. It reminds us again that owls are far stranger on the ground than the old moonlit image ever suggests. Some owls sunbathe, despite their reputation as creatures of night. The image of an owl belongs so firmly to darkness that seeing one sit in bright sunlight can feel almost wrong at first. Yet some owls do exactly that. They may spread their feathers slightly, lift the face, and hold still in the warmth as if absorbing the day itself. The posture can look regal, sleepy, or oddly reptilian, depending on the angle and the species. Sunbathing may help with feather care, parasite control, body warmth, or simple comfort, though the full reasons are not always easy to pin down in every situation. What matters for the imagination is the contradiction. A bird we associate with moonlight and secrecy sometimes pauses in open sun, like any ordinary creature of the day. That moment softens the myth without reducing the wonder. The owl does not stop being itself in daylight. It simply reveals that the life of these birds is broader than our old stories allow, and more flexible than the stereotype of permanent darkness. Owls may stare with stillness, then explode into motion. Part of what makes owls so mesmerizing is their control of time. They can hold a posture so completely that the bird seems carved rather than alive. The body stays fixed. The face remains steady. Even the branch beneath it begins to feel more animated than the owl itself. Then, in a fraction of a second, everything changes. Wings open. Feet drop. The whole bird becomes speed, direction, and force. That sudden shift is one of the great shocks of watching an owl hunt. The stillness was never idleness. It was compressed action, waiting for the exact instant to arrive. This pattern gives the bird an almost supernatural quality, because humans tend to read motionless animals as passive. Owls punish that assumption. They remind us that absolute calm can be a predator's most dangerous posture. When the movement finally comes, it feels less like a beginning than a release, as though the bird had been storing the strike inside its body all along. A roosting owl can disappear in plain sight. There are times when an owl is fully visible and still somehow unseen. A bird roosting against bark, tucked into evergreen cover, or flattened along a trunk can blend so completely into the textures around it that the eye slides past without registering anything unusual. The concealment is not only about color. It depends on shape, posture, shadow, and the refusal to move. Owls understand stillness in a way that seems almost strategic. They narrow the body, align with branches, and let mottled feathers echo bark, lichen, or leaf clutter until the bird becomes just another pattern in the tree. This makes finding one feel less like spotting a bird and more like solving a visual puzzle. Suddenly, the trump has eyes. Suddenly, the shadow has a face. Then you wonder how long it was there before you noticed. That disappearing act is part of the deep appeal of owls. They do not merely occupy the landscape. They know how to vanish into it while remaining completely present. Some species gather in communal winter roosts. The popular owl image is solitary, secretive, and self-contained. That is often true, but winter can produce exceptions that feel almost surprising. In some species, especially during the colder months, multiple birds may gather in the same roosting area and spend the day near one another. These communal roosts can form in dense trees, sheltered groves, or other quiet places where several owls sit hidden together, each still intensely individual, yet sharing the same refuge. There is something deeply captivating about that scene. A bird so often imagined alone is suddenly part of a concealed winter assembly. The reasons may involve safety, favorable shelter, or simple seasonal opportunity, but the effect on the imagination goes beyond explanation. You begin to picture certain trees not as empty winter shapes, but as secret meeting places for clustered owls. The cold season, which seems so stark from the outside, turns out to contain these hidden pockets of company where several silent hunters wait out the daylight together. Others spend most of the year fiercely solitary. For many owls, the world is not a place to share casually. Outside the breeding season, and sometimes even within it, an individual may live with strong distance from others of its kind, moving through territory as a self-contained hunter whose needs are best met alone. This solitude is not loneliness in any human sense. It is efficiency. One bird, one hunting range, one set of perches, one pattern of movement through the land. Solitary living reduces competition for prey and allows the owl to know its own space with remarkable detail. That can make encounters feel especially powerful, because when you see such a bird, you are not looking at part of a flock or a social crowd. You are meeting a single, self-sufficient presence. The silence around it seems to belong to the bird as much as the branch does. This fierce independence gives many owls their distinctive emotional atmosphere. They do not just seem private. They seem entirely complete in their privacy, as though the night itself were enough company. Owls can be mobbed by smaller birds during daylight. An owl that rules the dark can become a target the moment the sun comes up. Small birds such as crows, jays, chickadees, and other daytime species often react strongly when they discover a hidden owl at roost. They gather, scold, dive, and harass, creating a noisy storm around the predator. This behavior is called mobbing, and it turns the balance of visibility upside down. The owl may be far more dangerous in direct physical terms, yet during daylight it is the one under pressure, because the smaller birds can summon attention, numbers, and relentless alarm. There is something almost theatrical about the scene. A silent hunter tries to remain still while a cloud of furious little voices broadcasts its location to the world. That reaction makes ecological sense, since driving off a predator can protect nests and reduce danger nearby. It also reveals that owls are not always the effortless masters of every situation. In daylight, the forest can suddenly treat them like unwelcome royalty under siege. Tiny songbirds often detect hidden owls before humans ever do. One of the best ways to find an owl is sometimes not to look for the owl at all, but to pay attention to the birds that have already noticed it. tiny songbirds can be extraordinarily good at detecting a roosting owl hidden in foliage or against bark. The human eye may miss the shape completely, yet the smaller birds begin giving alarm calls, flicking through branches, and gathering with focused agitation around one particular spot. Suddenly the whole woodland seems to point. It is a wonderful reversal of scale. The little birds, which seem so vulnerable, become the experts in the moment. They know the predator is present before we do, and they advertise that knowledge loudly. For people hoping to see an owl, this means that songbird behavior can act like a living arrow in the trees. More deeply, it reminds us that the forest is full of awareness beyond our own. Creatures living inside that web of danger read one another constantly, even when human observers remain bewildered. An owl's silhouette can change dramatically just by raising feathers. Owls do not always keep the same outline. By lifting, flattening, or tightening different parts of the plumage, a bird can alter how large, narrow, alert, or branch-like it appears. Ear tufts may rise. Body feathers may puff outward. The chest may broaden, or the whole form may lengthen into something strangely thin and upright. These changes can happen quickly enough that the same owl seems almost like two different creatures within a minute. The effect matters in both defense and communication. A bird may try to look bigger when challenged, or more cryptic when trying to disappear. That flexibility gives the owl a more active visual life than many people realize. It is not simply perched there as a fixed statue. It is editing its own outline according to context. This makes every sighting a little more unstable and interesting. The shape you first notice may not be the real resting form at all, but a chosen presentation created through feather control and remarkable bodily composure. Even experts sometimes identify owls first by sound, not sight. Owls are so often hidden, distant, or active in poor light that even experienced observers may know a species by ear long before they ever see it clearly. A certain hoot pattern, a barking sequence, a thin whistle, or a drawn-out scream can reveal identity, while the bird itself remains a black shape, or no shape at all, somewhere beyond the edge of vision. This is one reason owling feels different from many other kinds of birdwatching. It is often less about color and detail, and more about listening into darkness with patience. The expert standing under trees at night may be building certainty from rhythm, pitch, spacing, and location, rather than from feathers. There is something beautifully humbling in that. Even deep knowledge does not always begin with sight. It begins with attention to a voice coming through cold air or thick cover. In the owl world, sound is often the first handshake, the first clue, and sometimes the only one you are ever granted. The fossil record shows owls have been hunting for millions of years. Owls are not a recent flourish in the history of birds. Their lineage stretches deep into the past, with fossil evidence showing that owl-like predators were already part of ancient ecosystems millions of years ago. That means the essential owl drama, silent approach, hooked beak, gripping feet, and forward face has roots far older than human civilization, older than our languages, older than most of the landscapes we now know. When you hear an owl call at night, you are hearing the present form of a design shaped across immense spans of time. The modern bird on the branch carries a history written not in stories first, but in stone. That alone gives owls a powerful gravity. They are not temporary curiosities of the current world. They are survivors of long evolutionary chapters, refined through ancient prey, ancient forests, and ancient nights. Fossils remind us that this bird group has endured enormous planetary change while keeping the core of its predatory identity unmistakably intact. Owls shared ancient skies with mammals that feared them early. Long before humans looked up and made symbols of owls, small mammals were already living under the pressure of their hunting. That ancient relationship runs deep. Early mammals, many of them nocturnal or crepuscular, would have faced aerial predators that rewarded silence, caution, and sensitivity to danger. In that sense, the history of owls is also part of the history of fear in other animals. Somewhere in the deep past, tiny, warm-blooded creatures huddled under cover, while owl ancestors searched above them. This idea gives owls an extra dimension. They are not only ancient birds, they are ancient participants in the nighttime arms race that helped shape mammalian behavior itself. Ears sharpened, nerves quickened. Stillness became survival. The night selected for listeners and hunters together. To imagine that old contest is to feel how far back the owl mystery really goes. These birds were already hunting over worlds with no humans in them, pressing their influence into the lives of creatures that would someday become our distant ancestors. Island owls have evolved into forms found nowhere else on Earth. Islands are natural laboratories of evolution, and owls have not escaped their strange influence. On islands, populations can become isolated for long periods, cut off from the gene flow and ecological pressures of the mainland. Over time, this separation can produce owl forms found nowhere else, birds shaped by local prey, climate, forest structure, and the limited world around them. An island owl may differ in size, plumage, habits, or voice from its relatives elsewhere, becoming a distinct answer to a very specific place. That makes island species especially captivating, because they feel like concentrated expressions of geography. The land itself seems to have sculpted them. It also makes them vulnerable. What evolved in isolation can be fragile when faced with habitat loss, introduced predators, or rapid change. Still, there is wonder first in the fact that owls have diversified this way at all. Even within a familiar bird group, isolation can create singular forms that belong completely and only to their own island worlds. Some extinct owls were far larger than living species. The owl world we know now is not the full version that once existed. In the past, some species grew to astonishing sizes, larger than anything living today. On certain islands and in ancient ecosystems, owls occupied roles that pushed their bodies into dimensions almost hard to picture from modern experience. Imagine an owl not merely impressive on a branch, but looming, deep-chested, and powerful enough to dominate a landscape in ways beyond even the biggest living eagle owl or fish owl. These extinct giants remind us that evolution has explored more than the forms still around us. The present is only a surviving sample, not the total imagination of natural history. That idea is thrilling and a little haunting. Somewhere in the past, night belonged to owls even larger than the grandest we know today. And those birds are now gone, except for bones and inference. Their existence enlarges the whole subject. Owls were once stranger, bigger, and even more imposing than the modern world suggests. Evolution turned the owl body into a machine for ambush. Everything about an owl begins to make more sense when you see it as an ambush design. The broad wings allow slow, controlled approach. The feather texture softens sound. The facial structures help gather faint clues from hidden prey. The eyes and neck arrangement support intense directional attention. The feet finish what the rest of the body sets up. None of these traits feels random once the hunting style becomes clear. This is a bird shaped not for long chases in bright open air, but for patience, stealth, and decisive close-range success. That unity is one of the most satisfying things about owls. The parts are interesting on their own, yet they become far more impressive when seen as pieces of one coordinated strategy. Evolution did not assemble a collection of clever tricks. It built an integrated predator. The result is a body that seems calm even when it is fully armed, and still even when it is 1 second away from impact. Ambush lives in the structure from head to talon. Their silence, hearing, and vision evolve together, not separately. It is tempting to describe owl traits one by one, as though the quiet wings, sensitive hearing, and powerful vision are separate marvels that happen to share a body. In reality, their greatest strength lies in how tightly those abilities support one another. Silence matters because it protects the usefulness of hearing. Hearing matters because prey is often hidden or active in dim conditions. Vision matters because low light still offers crucial information about distance, movement, and the larger scene. Together, these traits create a hunting system far more powerful than any one of them could provide alone. That integrated design is what makes owls feel so complete. Nothing stands alone for long. Each advantage increases the value of the others. The bird does not glide silently for style, or hear well as an isolated trick. It combines these gifts into a unified way of moving through the world. Once you see that, the owl becomes less a bundle of features and more a coordinated answer to nighttime life. Every owl species is a different answer to the same problem. At the heart of owl evolution lies one basic challenge. How do you catch living prey in low light, in a real landscape, with real competition, weather, and danger? Every species answers that problem a little differently. One becomes tiny and insect hunting in desert cactus country. Another grows massive beside cold rivers. Another masters the tundra. Another disappears into forest bark. Another runs on the ground near a burrow instead of ruling from a tree. This variation is what keeps the subject endlessly fresh. You are not learning one bird repeated again and again. You are seeing multiple evolutionary solutions built around a common theme. Each owl carries the family resemblance, yet each also reveals a different emphasis, a different compromise, a different style of success. That makes the group feel almost like a gallery of experiments, all centered on the same question of stealth and predation. The shared problem unites them. The diversity of solutions is what makes them so captivating. The world is full of owl niches, from deserts to rainforests. Owls feel like creatures of one mood, but they belong to many worlds. They live in deserts where cactus and dust define the horizon. They occupy rainforests packed with dripping leaves and layered shadows. They inhabit grasslands, tundra, marsh edges, farm country, mountains, and old forest interiors where daylight hardly reaches the floor. Each habitat offers a different niche, and owls have repeatedly found ways to fill it. That spread is one of the most impressive things about the group. The same broad predatory identity can be translated into radically different settings without losing its essential character. A desert owl and a rainforest owl may live in utterly different soundscapes, climates, and prey communities, yet both remain clearly part of the same ancient family. This global versatility changes the way you think about them. Owls are not just birds of one eerie woodland tradition. They are a worldwide phenomenon, woven into wildly different ecosystems wherever darkness, cover, and opportunity have allowed the owl form to take hold. Once you understand owls, the night feels full of intelligence. Learning about owls changes the emotional texture of darkness. Before, the night may have seemed empty, or at least unreadable, filled with shadows and silence that blurred together. After you understand owls, that same darkness begins to feel inhabited by attention. A pause in the trees is no longer just stillness. It might be listening. A distant call is no longer just a strange sound. It is a declaration from a bird that knows its space better than you do. Even an empty field can feel charged with the possibility of unseen perception. This is part of the gift owls offer to the imagination. They teach us that the night is not vacant. It is active, intelligent, and structured by senses far sharper than our own. Once that idea settles in, evening landscapes become more alive without becoming less peaceful. The dark gains depth. You begin to sense hidden awareness moving through it, and the whole world after sunset starts to feel more inhabited than you ever knew. The more science learns about owls, the stranger they become. Owls already arrive with a reputation for mystery, yet careful study has not simplified them into ordinary birds. If anything, each new layer of understanding seems to make them even more astonishing. Research reveals subtle feather textures that change airflow, anatomical asymmetries that sharpen sound location, hidden developmental stages in the young, ecological ties to prey cycles, and evolutionary car. Histories stretching across deep time. The remarkable part is how well the mystery survives explanation. It does not vanish. It shifts. Instead of wondering vaguely at a night bird with big eyes, we begin to marvel at the extraordinary precision of the actual animal. Knowledge turns the blur into structure, and the structure proves to be more surprising than the blur ever was. That is why owls reward curiosity so richly. They are not magical because we do not understand them. They are magical because understanding keeps uncovering designs and behaviors stranger than most people would have dared to invent. Science does not shrink them. It enlarges them. Now we've reached the end of our journey through the world of owls. Tonight, we wandered through snowfields and forests, grasslands and tundra, old trees, hidden burrows, and wide midnight skies. We followed birds that can hear life moving under snow, drift through darkness on silent wings, and vanish so completely into bark and shadow that they seem to become part of the tree itself. We met tiny owls living in cactus hollows, great hunters watching rivers, and pale northern wanderers arriving like winter made visible. And perhaps that is what makes owls so unforgettable. They feel like creatures of mystery at first, but the closer you get, the more extraordinary the real story becomes. Their feathers, their hearing, their flight, their strange faces, their hidden lives, all of it reveals a world more fascinating than folklore ever imagined. Not emptier in the dark, but fuller, more watchful, more alive. So now, as this journey comes to a close, let your mind grow soft around the edges. Let the branches darken. Let the snowfields widen. Let the night air settle around you, and allow all those bright little fragments of wonder to drift slowly out across the woods until they become part of the stillness. And if you've enjoyed this sleepy journey through the lives of owls, you can always leave a like, subscribe to the channel, or share a thought below. It helps more wandering minds find their way here, one sleepy soul at a time. And if you happen to still be awake, there'll be another video waiting for you on the screen. But for now, there is nothing more you need to do. Just rest. Let your breathing slow. Let the night hold you for a little while longer. Sleep well, and good night.